Hello everyone, my name is Danny and you're watching another episode of Saturday Stitching, where any day can feel like Saturday if your stitching is going well. I'd like to say welcome to any new viewers who have stumbled upon me, and welcome back to any returning viewers. I cherish those of you who keep watching my rumblings whenever I feel like putting up a video. So, it's getting hot in here. If you watched my other video already with this same outfit on and I said it was cooler, well, Mother Nature decided to make me a liar because it's getting hot in here now. So we're going to make it through this quick. I say this every week, but I'm really going to try to make this quick. A, because I don't have a lot to show, and B, because it's getting hot in here and I don't want to have sweat dripping down my nose. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to start first of all with a trend that I've been thinking about, and I'd like to hear your opinions in the comments if you feel like you'd like to do that, about pom-poms. If you spend any time on any Yarny websites or watching other people's videos, or especially company videos like Yarnspiration videos or videos from people who are what do they call them? Not street teams, but representatives for yarn companies like Good Knit Kisses or Crochet Crowd or some of those people. Everybody last week seemed to do a bit with pom-poms, and the Craft Yarn Council had a week-long pom-pom party where they posted things on their website. I couldn't totally understand what was going on. I didn't really follow it, but I do hear everybody in the knitting and crochet in the Yarny community talking about pom-poms, how pom-poms are the trend right now. And since I don't really read, I used to read a lot of fashion magazines when I was younger, but I stopped doing that years ago. So, and I don't really get out to see a lot of what people are wearing, and quite frankly, it's not cold here yet. So pom-poms strike me as a winter thing, but what I'm getting at is, I wonder if pom-poms are a yarn industry trend or if they're a mainstream trend. Because I have noticed in the past where something gets to be real popular within the knitting community or within the crochet community, but outside of the community, nobody knows what anybody's talking about. Several years ago, it was ponchos. Everybody was like, oh, ponchos are the thing. Everybody's going to be wearing ponchos. Ponchos are it. But out in my day-to-day, and this was when I actually worked in an office and got out in the world and saw people, out in my day-to-day, I rarely saw anybody wear a poncho. But knitters and crocheters were all about making the ponchos. Right now, it seems like shawls and cowls are, big things. Knitters and crocheters love to make shawls and love to make cowls, but out in the world, or even on like TV, or when I flip through a magazine or look on websites that are more mainstream fashion, I don't really see people wearing wearing shawls or cowls. Whether you wear a shawl like this or whether you wear it up around your neck like this, I don't see a lot of people wearing them very much. Every once in a while I'll see that long, you saw that I made one myself, the longer thing that is almost a scarf but it's connected at the bottom, because my daughter has one. I occasionally see girls wearing those, but like these big cowls that come up here, but then again, I'm in the South. It gets cool, but it doesn't get super cold. So maybe I'm just not living in the state to see anybody wearing this. But I don't see people wearing them on TV either. So I don't know. And so now pom-poms are a thing. And everybody's talking about pom-poms. And pom-poms look really cute on hats. I've always thought pom-poms look cute on hats. I have a pom-pom maker in my closet that I haven't put to good use yet. I haven't even taken it out of the package yet. I bought it with my January birthday money and haven't taken it out of the package yet, but I've been thinking I need to get that out because I need to start making some winter hats and putting some pom-poms on them. But like, do people really want hats with pom-poms on them? I guess I'll have to wait until all the Hallmark Christmas movies start coming out to see if women have pom-poms on their hats or not. But that was just my thought on pom-poms. I was just wondering if it's just a thing that knitters and crocheters like to make, or is it a thing that people really wear? And also, if you want to comment, are there other things that you see in the knitting and crocheting community that are things that we stitchers like to make, but people in our lives or just people out in the world in general, you don't really see people wearing them? Okay, so let's move on to whips. Don't have a lot. The first one, if you watch Yarn Joy, Terry over at Yarn Joy, she's mentioned this several times. We both belong to the same group on Facebook called Stitch Your Library, and that group has decided to start doing a project called 365 Days of Granny Squares, which was originated in 2016 by Nadia of the blog Yarn Utopia, where she made a video every day of her making a different type of granny square every day for 365 days of last year. And so we're not going to do a square every day. This is kind of just a laid back in between project, because as I said, the meaning of our group is Stitch Your Library is to try to use mainly the books that you've collected. In my case, I do have some magazines, but in my case it's more so the patterns that I've bookmarked because it's hard for me to part with money, but I will bookmark free patterns all day long on Ravelry, and I have tons that I've bookmarked or actually downloaded onto my hard drive or what have you. So the purpose of our group is to really work on making those patterns that we already have bookmarked or purchased, instead of constantly looking for new patterns. But also, so this is just an in-between thing to do in between that. That's the way I'm looking at it anyway. We've decided that, there's no pressure to do it every day. Just, we all started with square number 1 and we're all doing the squares in order, but how long it takes you, that's the only thing we all have in common with the project. How long it takes you to do it, that's your business. So the first week I got a little enthusiastic and I did do a square a day for the first 3 days, and then reality kicked in and I had to do homework and things like that. So I haven't done any squares since then. So I still have only 3 squares, where I think Yarn Joy has done 7 already. Terry at Yarn Joy has done 7 already, and some of the other people have done 4 or 5. I might do a few today, depends on how I feel. But let me show you. I joke about project bags all the time. This is what happens when you use plastic grocery bags for project bags sometimes. I went to pull my yarn out of the closet and the whole thing collapsed, so I had to get a new bag. So I've got a collection of, just a collection of Karen Simply Soft yarns. There's a color I haven't used yet that's way down here, big bright pink as well. That were left over. I think I may have bought 1 or 2 skeins of black Karen Simply Soft, because that's all I've ever used it for. I think all these other colors came from one of my daughter's teachers, and some left over from a project that my daughter was doing that she never ended up finishing. So I decided so they're not, if you look, like I've said before, this is what my yarn scraps look like. It's not, stuff like that where it's more than just a little. Let me see what I've got. See, to me, this is a yarn scrap, okay? But I don't have a lot of this. I have a lot of this and mostly this kind of size, where it's more than just a couple yards, this is still enough to almost get a hat out of, if you were doing a beanie or what have you. So I have a lot of that kind of size, but none of it really matches each other. So you wouldn't just put all these colors together and make a hat, or put them all together and make a scarf necessarily or whatever. But for a patchwork blanket or a granny square, it kind of feels like it fits together. So that was my reasoning. But at the same time, since I only have like 5 or 6 colors in here, I decided to just coordinate the colors together and just use the Karen Simply Soft instead of, because I have some scraps from that big box you saw in my video where I got the big box from my mother, and I have a lot of scraps in there from her of all different colors. But I kind of wanted to, even though this is supposed to be a scrap Afghan, a scrap project for the because part of the Stitch Your Library, in addition to using your patterns, is to kind of use up your own yarn as well. I know most people call that a stash buster or whatever, but I like calling it my yarn library. So anyway, I've only done the first 3 squares of the project. Here's the first one, which is just a basic granny square where you change colors every row. I've got purple, green, yellow, white, and black. And you'll notice that there's a theme as soon as you see the second one. Here's square number 2 on the list. I really like the way this one turned out. I like the squareness of it. I like the angularness of it and the tightness of the weave. And this one is number 3. I'm not real crazy about this one because it sort of turned out lopsided. But all the squares are the same size. This one just kind of turned out a little wobbly because when I got to the end, I had more spaces or more stitches to fill or something than what she said in the video. So I had to rip out the last row and redo it again, kind of using my own count as opposed to her count. I think there was like 3 half double crochets across here, and that ended up with me, or maybe 2 double crochets, half double crochets here, and I ended up with, when I got to the end, I ended up with several that had no stitch that I still need to stitch into. So I pulled it all out so I could space it out and put like maybe 4 on each side, so that when I got to the end it would meet back up to the beginning properly. But it's still kind of wonky. But I'm using I think I'm using a G hook, maybe an H hook, and as I say, Karen Simply Soft, which is worsted. And as you can see, I trimmed them all in black because as much as I like the idea of a scrap blanket, I feel like I have to have something unifying to pull all the squares together. I can only deal with so much chaos in my blanket. There's got to be something pulling it together. So we'll see. We'll see how I go, because I like these squares, but I know that there are some squares. I've looked ahead on the list, and there are some squares that I don't think are that cute, but I'm going to do them anyway. And maybe I'll change my mind about them after I stitch them in the colors that I'm using. I don't know. Color can make a big difference in a granny square to me, because I've seen some granny squares that I really don't like, but then when you do them in a certain color palette, they're prettier to me. So we'll see how that works out. The only other thing is the sports Afghan that I mentioned to you on my last video, which I think I made 2 weeks ago, on the 8th maybe, on the 9th, on September 9th. Yes. And I haven't gotten a lot done on it, and I will tell you, first I'll show you how much I've gotten done, which is not a lot, and then I'll explain, because that leads into the last thing, the last Yarny thing that I wanted to talk about. But this is what I've gotten, because remember I said I wasn't going to tell you which team it was for, because I'd let you guys figure it out as I showed it as I was going along. So far, this is what I've got, which you can't see because it goes across my whole bed, so you can't see how long it is. let's see. So if I stretch really hard, it kind of goes from my wingspan, my full wingspan. So that'll be nice enough as a blanket. And it was boring doing all these black rows. Any of you who stitch with black know that working with black can be boring. But for me, any blanket is kind of boring in the beginning when you're doing that first setup color, where, especially with a picture Afghan, there's always in the beginning where you're doing that setup color where it's just a solid color back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with no interesting stitches for a while. And that's this. And I kept putting off working on it, and then as soon as I got to the gold, it was like, okay, a different color. Yes, a different color. I was excited to work on it once I got a different color going, and I actually had to force myself to stop that night because I was getting pain across here. Which, by the way, I didn't give you the hand update. The hand update. I was doing all right, but my fingers today are numb across here. It was only this finger that was numb earlier today, and now it's all three. The more that I move around touching the yarn and doing things, I'm feeling a little more numbness come in, but no stiffness and no pain, so we're all good. Like I said, I think that numbness is just going to be my constant companion. But that leads me to why I haven't gotten any further than this, because I bought some of the Walmart Mainstays yarn, which, can you see that? Oh, there we go. Can you see that? It's kind of washed out in here. Yeah, you can't see that. You can't even read that. But this is the Mainstays yarn. There we go. Basic yarn, it's called, from Walmart. And as I don't know if I mentioned in my last video, but you know, everybody calls it a new yarn, but I have two skeins. I thought I had one skein of it. I have two skeins of it in my bag there from when they were selling it 10 years ago. So it's not necessarily a new yarn, but it's a returning yarn, shall we say. But most of the people that I watch have started knitting and crocheting since they've had it around for the first time, which just makes me feel old. But so I asked Ella of No Catchy Name podcast, and she said that she's using Red Heart and Mainstays like together in the same square, and there's not really much of a difference. She didn't have a problem. Fine. So when I finally got a ride to the store, because I knew that I had enough small balls of color. This blanket has some patches where there's small balls of color in the logo, but I knew I didn't have enough for the background, which is all black, and there's another section of the background that I didn't have the color for. So, and I knew I didn't have enough gold. So when I went to the store, I wanted to check to see that if they had it in Mainstays, because if I can get it cheaper, that's cool. Well, I saw the colors that I wanted to pick up in Mainstays, and I picked them up. Didn't really pay attention or really feel it or anything, because, you know, I have Mainstays in my house. I know what Mainstays feels like. I'm all good. I just picked it up, saw that it was indeed $1.97 for 397 yards of yarn. I said, good, cool. Picked up what I needed, brought it home. I was using Red Heart. I had some black Red Heart left, and I had gotten this far on the blanket, and then that was the end of the Red Heart that I had. So I picked up the Mainstays, and I said, well, you know, they say they work well. Black is black. I'm going to start stitching it in together. Immediately when I stitched it in, I could tell the difference, because the stitches went down. Okay, like if you look at this stitch, I don't know if you can see this because I can't even see what I'm showing you, but you see how this right here is up, and then this is the previous row. Okay, if you can see that. because this is in the middle of a row, right? Well, when I added the yarn, the stitches in the mainstays yarn were so much smaller. They were like 2/3 the height of the stitches in the red heart, so that it went like that. And I said, okay, this is my imagination. Maybe when I come back around, it'll be fine. And so I went ahead and did the end of the row and came back, and it was a little bit better, but you could still see that there was definitely a dip. And so it took me 3 rows for the dip to be barely noticeable. So I thought, well, this might be okay. But then I kept looking at it, and the mainstays looked like a slightly different shade of black than this, which I know sounds crazy because black is black. But again, you know, sometimes when you have black, the two blacks don't look the same. I'm looking down because I've got a black shirt on and a skirt with a black stripe in it, and I debated getting up to show you what I'm talking about, but I don't think you'll be able to see in my blown out camera. But you know, sometimes when you put on a black shirt and a black pair of pants, it's not quite the same black. And I even took it outside to look at it in the sunlight to see if I was being crazy. And I finally was like, you know, this is going to bother me. And just as I said in the last video, where I was going through a thing of, I'm not going to just fudge things anymore and get by and then go through the whole rest of the project wondering, is this going to work? Is this going to work? Should I have ripped that out? Should I have started over? You know, if it's bothering me, just rip it out and start it over. I didn't used to be that person, but now it's like I'd rather just rip it out and start over. Even though I'm such a slow stitcher, that's why I resist ripping anything out, because I know how slow I am. And it's like, oh, if I rip this out, then it'll take me forever to get back to where I was. But I'd rather do that than constantly have it bothering me, especially since this is not a blanket that's for my house. If this was a blanket that was just for my house, I would just fudge it and keep going. But since this is a blanket that's going to somebody else, it bothers me for it to not be right. So I ripped it out and I started over, and that's why now I have this much. And side note, the reason I haven't frogged this red heart piece is because I was going to show you the difference. And so I sat down here right before I made the video, and I had the yarn out and I had the same hook out, and I was going to add, redo a row connected to this so you could see what it looked like when I did it the first time. And darned if I didn't take this mainstays and start stitching on this and there was no dip. It's like, am I hallucinating? And I pulled it out and I did it again, and it's the same hook that I used before, and when I did it this time, no dip. But there was definitely a dip when I did it before. So I don't know if I can tell you that this mainstays feels thinner than when you look at it. I would show you in the camera, but you can't really see. If I was to hold up the mainstays and the red heart on my hand, you're not going to be able to see the difference. I mean, this is the mainstays, this is the red, this is the mainstays, this is the red heart right there. But you can't really see that one of them is thinner than the other. But when you have it in your hand, both of them side by side, and you feel it, this mainstays feels different than the red heart. To me, I said this to, I think it was Melody on Melody Crochet. It feels to me like somebody took a fleece blanket and cut it into thin strips and wound it up into a skein, because it has a slightly furry feeling to it compared to the red heart and compared to the old mainstays, because I pulled both skeins of the old mainstays out to me, and that old mainstays is a smooth twist a smooth, tight twist that feels like Red Heart, although a little bit softer. This feels furry, a little bit furry if you feel it, but it doesn't. And it feels thinner. And I'm thinking that maybe the beginning of the skein that I had used, because at this point I've used, as you can see, this skein is floppy, so I'm halfway done with this skein already. But I'm thinking maybe the beginning of the skein was super thin, because already this part of the skein that I'm looking at now is not quite as thin as some of the parts I felt before. And if you go even down a little further on this same string I'm holding now, this part here feels thinner than this part I just tried to crochet with here. So I think there might be a slight consistency issue with the mainstays. That's not enough to make me not use it, because it is less expensive. And in the blanket itself, this gold and this black are both mainstays, and in the blanket itself it looks fine. The stitches look nice and even. It looks fine. So once you've got it all stitched up, but if you look too close at individual stitches, you're like, that doesn't look right. But all, in the aggregate, as they would say, all together, it looks fine. So it's not going to stop me from buying it. I'm a little concerned because there is a white section of this blanket, and the white that I have is Red Heart. And I'm definitely going to use the Red Heart because I have a big jumbo of Red Heart, and I can't see buying more mainstays to just not use that Red Heart. So I'm going to try to use the Red Heart, and hopefully it won't make a difference. One other thing I noticed about the mainstays, which I thought was funny, simply because a lot of the yarn snobs talk about how, big box store acrylics feel plasticky to them, and they've never felt plasticky to me. But I noticed in the black skein, I haven't seen this in the gold skein, but in the black skein, I kept seeing little tufts sticking out of the. I can't find one now, but I saw little tufts sticking out of the strand, and I thought, oh, that must have been where a knot was tied, because people always talk about occasionally I find a knot in my stuff. So I just kept working around it, because I'm not cutting knots out and stuff. I'll just work around it. But then I finally came to one and looked more closely at it and realized it wasn't a knot. It's a little piece of fluff, and you can just pull it off. And when I pulled the piece of fluff off, and I ran into it 3 or 4 times, when I pulled the piece of fluff off and looked at it, it looked like a piece of lint, except on one side of the lint it looked plasticky, like a black garbage bag. Or like if you've ever sometimes accidentally put something hot against something that didn't look like it was plastic, but then it melted and got shiny. That's what it looked like. It looked like somebody had put something hot on the yarn and it got shiny on one side. And I just thought that was funny, because so many of the yarn snobs, again, I think this yarn feels fine, but I know so many of the yarn snobs go, oh, this yarn feels so plasticky. And I'm like, if they grab this, they would go, aha, it is plastic. But that's all I have for projects. If I come back on, as I said, if you watched my Friday Reads video, as I said, I will not be making any more videos. Instead of promising that I'm going to come back in a week or come back in 2 weeks, we have the technology for you to just subscribe and hit that notification bell, and then you don't have to keep waiting for me to come back. You'll just get a little notification when I actually do a video. Because as I was watching somebody else's video, I can't remember who it was yesterday, and they said, I don't know when I'm going to make videos because I'm not going to come back every week if I don't have anything to show. And that's how I feel. I want to talk to you guys and I want to share my work, but it feels a little bit like a pressure to do stuff and put other stuff to the side. I have studying to do. I have other things to do in my household, and I can't always get as much knitting and crocheting done as I would like to, and I don't want to feel pressured to try to do it just so that I can have something to show on the video and then neglect something else that should be done. So same thing with the reading. I don't want to feel pressured to read just so I can have something to say in the video, because this is supposed to be fun. So I will just say, I'll see you guys when I see you. And if you came for the Yarny stuff, that's all the Yarny stuff. I just have a little bit of chit chat at the end if anybody wants to hang out for the chit chat. But if you came for the Yarny stuff, bye. See you later. Like I said, I don't have a lot of chit chat. I just wanted to say, because you're probably wondering, she's got clothes on. Yes, I've got clothes on because I went out. I actually went out for lunch today. I belong to a parenting group online that I've belonged to ever since my twins were born, so it's been about 20 years. And a lot of the women in the group live in areas where they've been able to meet each other in person, but with me, with my transportation issues and whatnot, and there's not a lot of people in the group who live in my part of the country, so I haven't really met any of the people in the group. But there is one woman in the group who lives in South Carolina, and we always say that we'll meet one day. Well, today she was in my state in North Carolina for another occasion, and she had some downtime and wanted to come see me. So we went to a fun barbecue joint called Peace and Harmony Q Shack, and had barbecue and sat at the table and ate fries and talked. And at first I thought we weren't really going to have anything to talk about, because even though we've been in this same online group for 20 years, it's hard to remember. In my case, it was hard to remember, okay, what have we talked about online and what have we not talked about online? What does she know about my life and what does she not know about my life? How should this conversation go? What should we talk about? But actually, it went pretty smoothly. It went more smoothly than I expected it to go. And it was very nice. On a practical note, it was just very nice to get out of the house, because since I don't drive, I don't get out very often. I have started getting out once a month with my BFF, and that's cool. But other than that, with my husband working all kinds of hours, I don't really get out very often. So it's nice to get out and have a meal and be a person out in the world, even though I do like to huddle in my home and, because when I say I don't get out, don't go, oh, woe is me. Part of it is because I like being a little bit of a homebody. But then there are times that I like getting out. So I'm trying to get better at finding ways, even with my limited transportation situation and limited finances, finding ways to balance how much of a homebody I am with getting out and seeing people and putting myself out there. So that's all I wanted to say. I hope everybody has a good weekend if you're watching this on the weekend, or a good day on whatever day that you're watching this, and I hope that your stitching is going well. Bye.